So, as you guys can see, we have a couple of things to look at. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Gus here. So since we have a lot of IEMs on the table, we kind of need to get through them as quickly as possible because I want to unbox everything and give you my first impressions of actually trying them out and listening to them. So let's begin with these guys. These are the SeeAudio Yume 2. I never really tried the Yume 1s, but I do know that they have a really nice reputation for their price and everything they deliver. Now, as soon as you open the box, look at that. You're greeted with the actual IEMs, and they have plastic wraps on top of them. They have sort of a peel going on. Other than that, you have a little bit of documentation and plus like a microfiber or something to help clean stuff up. Card with waifu stuff on it. A waifu postcard, plus the actual documentation, and because I mean, who would want that? Then you have all of these different sort of ear tips and a case. And look at this, almost like a jewelry sort of case. Now inside of it you get, whoa, look at that. You have you have a brooch, again, another waifu thing to get a hold of. And in the box you have these amazing cables that they are locked down in place with the button that you need to unlock to actually get access to the cables. And look at that. That is a beautiful cable, actually. Flowy, apparently a 2-weave all the way to the splitter and then a single thread going to each of the terminations. Everything is shiny. You have a little bit of a strain relief on the actual connection, 3.5mm with a little bit of protection. This is a nice setup. Now let's take a look at the IEMs themselves. Wow, these look nice. Look at this. Shiny as all hell. You do have some text on them, SeeAudio Yume 2 plus the LNRs, so that's good. And this is actually less prone to fingerprints than I was expecting due to something being this shiny, but this looks really premium. Okay, so next we have these guys. The Tipsy Ttromsos, the Pine Stone Sea. The actual case is closed off by magnets. There you go, Tipsy Life, for whatever that means. Documentation here, as usual, a nice little parchment paper with a bunch of designs and the Tipsy logo. And inside you have the IEMs. This is, again, this is pretty. The cable is pretty as well, braided, and it's also blue. Terminations and connections are all in this sort of darker gray, almost gunmetal, almost sort of dark gunmetal color with 3.5mm connection, a little bit of a strain relief, and the separator in the middle is again the same sort of dark gunmetal color with a separator, and it's everything made out of metal actually. Inside we got access to a couple of other things like this. This is literally like one of those things that you can put on your car for smell. Well, there is a little baggie with other silicone tips, plus a pair of foam tips, nice to have, and a little carry pouch. Now moving right along, we have the Tripowin Leá. It's unassuming, let's say, but they actually have a reputation for punching well above their class. I will not look surprised if they do something like that, because the last piece of gear that I tested from Tripowin was the Tripowin TC01, and those things were shiny, great little IEMs. And since these are supposed to be a really big improvement on top of the other ones, I'm definitely not going to be surprised if that's exactly what ends up happening. You have the IEMs with a almost recessed tubing connection that's actually rounded, which is interesting to say the least. The IEMs are this matte black with absolutely no other text than the embossed Tripowin logo right in smack dab in the middle. The cable is bright silver, which is not what I was expecting, but at least it does match with the actual connectors, which are again bright silver. The cable itself looks to be fine enough, nothing to write home about, but right angle connector, and everything seems to be in order for it to last well, at least somewhat of a long time. 3 pairs of silicone tips, and that's it. No other accessories, nothing else with these right out of the box. Now these, the Tanchjim OLEDs, are apparently very special. This is the base version, which is an improvement apparently on the original OLEDs. You get a little bit of branding inside, then you get this thing out of the way, and oh boy, there are the IMs. Inside of this little thing, what do we have here? Well, we have a couple of different options for silicone tips on a bunch of different formats and sizes. We have certain different rings that I'm supposing is something that you would apply to the nozzles, maybe, to help with seal almost, or something like that. And a bunch of documentation, plus a little carry pouch. Almost velvety to the touch, but this thing actually looks quite decent. Now once you get this little part out of the box, look at that. Those are the IMs. And they look really premium, actually. They are actually much bigger than I anticipated, because I didn't anticipate them to be this thick outside of just the metal casing. But here are some of the rings that are supposed to come with them. And underneath we get this gorgeous cable. Oh, look at that. This is a really nice straight cable with a silicone coating outside. And inside of it you have, well, supposedly a 2-weave cable going all the way from this 3.5mm connection, all metal with this little bit of a strain relief, the same sort of metal separator right in the middle, a microphone, and the silicone hooks for you to get these things on your ears with the 2-pin protruding connectors that actually go into the recessed connections of the IEMs. Okay, so now the Dunu Kima 10mm DLC dynamic. We're going to be seeing DLC again in this video, but perhaps you guys already know what I'm talking about. We'll get to that in a second. Squeeze. Ooh, alright. We have the IMs themselves, plus a little hard carry case. What do we have in here? Oh, it doesn't open all the way. It's got these little sort of membrane things. These are... I kind of hate these little plastics, but we have a bunch of different blue ear tips. Whoa, these are different. These are very different. They have the same shape as you usually see on foam ear tips, but they are silicone. This is unusual. Interesting. This is sort of a nice addition. Okay, just color ear tips. Probably just a cloth. Yeah, just a cloth. Presented by Dunu. And now we get to the IEMs. And these are the Dunu Kimas. These are hefty. They are actually heavy. There's your 2-pin connection, gold smeared nozzles. Construction of the actual IEM feels really solid and it does inspire confidence, but the cable feels a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's completely covered in silicone, but it's sort of a grippy type of silicone. That side the cable is interesting, it's nice. Plus the 3.5mm connection, which is really shiny, really shiny. And despite being really shiny, it doesn't really attract many fingerprints. But it's also made out of metal. I like the fact that you have a bunch of different options in terms of the tips that you can use. You have tools to be able to clean everything out, and the actual construction of the IMs is pretty impressive. I think it's a nice overall package. And now, how about we go for a double bill? These are the TinHifi C2 Mech Warrior and the TinHifi T2 DLC. HiFiGo obviously sent these ones for me to check out. These are actually pre-production, like early unit ones that I should have gotten to like a long time ago. But anyway, starting with the DLC because, well, physically they're supposed to be just the same as the ones we're already, used to. Pop these open, and just as we are used to, tin presentation. Taking them out of the box, you get the famous blue ear tips, cables. This is one of the main differences that I already know about these in comparison to the original T2s, plus the other ear tips. Now, to the actual IEMs, there is a bit of a difference compared to the originals because one, well, physically they're basically the same, but they do have this, which is different. The original ones didn't used to have this sort of branding on the sides, and the connector actually is different right now from every other T2 variant since the originals, because these are 2-pin instead of MMCX. Now, let's put them aside here. The other TinHifis, the C2 Mech Warrior. Oh boy, these are different. Such an industrial look, almost. You do have a recessed 2-pin connection there, plus big R, supposedly big L on the other one. This construction is interesting. There is even this triangular little shape there. It does have sort of a grill happening inside, so it should mean that this is not going to be entirely closed, but it's still an IM just the same. I'm really curious to see how this translates to actual, real world usage. What else do we have here? We have several different matte black silicon tips. This is a sweet looking cable, actually. From this already, I know this is not going to be a super flowy cable. And yeah, it does retain a little bit of its rigidity from positioning from, prior situations. So it's probably not going to be the flowiest cable ever, but here you go. Right angle connector. There's a TinHifi logo right there. That should be good. It does look really industrial. I'm interested to see how these things sound. Well, to hear how these things sound. And now to this. Oh my goodness. This looks gorgeous. Sort of a jade look, and everything is clear on the other side so you can see the drivers. Currently this first. Okay, here's the cable. Everything is resin. There's no, obviously it's not glass or metal here, but the connections are made out of metal. These are MMCX connectors. Interesting. I actually enjoy MMCX connectors. I mentioned that before. This right in the middle, it does seem to be made out of metal, but I can't be sure right now. But the cable itself is like really flowy. All right, it's a twisted cable covered in a silicone wrapping. There's a little protection for the 3.5mm connection. The gnarled ending here, like, it's really well made, really premium looking. What do we have here? A special pair of foams in a little plastic case to protect them, and a little hard carry case. But let's check what's in the actual case. We have lots of ear tips, all of them made out of silicone. These are more dome shaped, these are more traditional shaped. Interesting. And a clip, a shirt clip. It's been a while since I've seen one of these come in the box with an IM, actually. Especially one that doesn't have a built-in mic on the actual cable. Ouch. Now here's something I don't get to say very often. These guys arrived like 10,000 years ago, but fell behind some furniture and I didn't notice it was there, so I thought I lost them. These are the TRN VX Pro. This specifically is the blue ocean version it doesn't have a microphone. I love boxes that open through magnets, and here we go. We have a little hard carry case, like actual hard carry case. SeeAudio VX Pro. Oh, okay, it's 1 dynamic and 8 balanced armatures. I'm not exactly sure if I like that approach. And these are 2-pin, but the recessed one where the actual cable is recessed and, just plugs it around the housing. It seems like it's got a bit of a flow to the edge. Metal, shiny, but not too shiny, kind of matte. Doesn't attract fingerprints. Interesting. A set of silicone tips. Then we have another set of silicone tips. Translucent with white and, grayish with red. 1/4" adapter. Matte black foam tips. And here's the cable. A little bit more tangled than I would have liked, but hey, These were missing in action for a long time. A right angle connection, 3.5mm with protection for the actual connector. It does have a little bit of strain relief here. And this is a 4-weave cable, like a really, really tight weave cable that comes to a termination that's made out of plastic and a 2-weave that go to each of the terminations with actual hooks on the end. I'm really not a fan of these silicone hooks, but I understand why most IEMs use them. And then we got to 3 products from a brand I am absolutely sure you guys know a lot about. Moondrop, starting with the Aria, since everybody knows that the most. Aria, then you open the little flap that's magnetically attached to the side of the box. Moondrop Technology Company, and then you get to them, the beautiful Moondrop Arias. And inside you have the case. Cable plus the different ear tips. Now these have gotten so famous because they are actually really that good. Yes, sometimes there is too much hype over some products, but sometimes the hype is warranted. It's because it's actually good. And that's the case with the Arias. For the money, for the about 79, 80 bucks that you can buy them for, I've actually seen them for around 60 bucks. These are absolutely fantastic. Now let's talk KXXX. It's almost like the Arias were in an attempt to make a more budget-friendly option of the KXXX. The original ones were actually called KXXS, the letter S here, and this is the mass drop version that has triple X's on it. You basically get your cable plus a couple of different accessories, like there's a little pair of tweezers, then there's this little pouch here. You have extra tips in there, and this there's an airplane adapter in the box with it, and plus this thing. Then you have a carry case, which, I mean, comparing to the one on the Aria, this one is more compact, but this is I don't know, it just feels like a better case overall. Magnetic lid, and you get the IEMs. Now, the fact that they are matte black everything with this sort of angular design, these are the ones that look the best for me. Compared to the Arias, at least, I like the way the KXXX looks better. And I actually also enjoy the sound of these a little bit better than the Arias, but it's a toss-up to a level that's measurement-wise, it's almost impossible to tell them apart from one another. An extra pack of nozzle filters if you so desire or think you need to exchange them. The cable itself is really good. Is it the best cable in the world? No. And I know a bunch of people that actually don't like this cable at all, but I do. It's like well-rounded, also matte black. It's sleeved. This is sort of a fabric-like cable, so it doesn't kink, it doesn't, grip on stuff, and it's like sort of a braided feel. And the actual silicone coating on the hooks is it's actually really pleasant. The fact that these are like full metal jackets do mean they are a little bit heavier, but it's not uncomfortable at all to wear them, actually. This is a lot different in terms of, well, basically everything. Have some indication of how to use them. So not almost falling out, you kind of need to really shove them in there. And these are actually they're quite different. Listen to this. Definitely full metal jackets, a little bit of a strain relief here. In terms of the cable, there's not much space for them to do anything different here. Haha, spaceship. Anyway, this is probably a double helix twist inside with a silicone coating on the outside, metal terminations with a little bit of a strain relief, and it does feel premium enough. Moondrop branding on the separator right in the middle, and everything is almost in the same kind of metal. I mean, this is matte, this is almost matte, and this is super shiny. So it would be nice if everything was either one or the other, but anyway, that's what we have for today. All right, so we have 12 different IEMs to listen to, so we better get going. Let's start from, I don't know, the right? Okay, let's start from the right. So now that we have listened, well, I have listened to all 12 IEMs, let me just take both the KXXX and the Arias out of the equation because I already knew how they sounded before. They have a good amount of bass, they have a good amount of punch, a good amount of detail, they are rather soft, they are not sibilant at all. They deliver a well-balanced portrayal of all the frequencies. It's not too much of a V shape, it's sort of, and it's not necessarily flat either. It has a good level of detail and sparkle in the treble, same for the mids, there's a good level of detail and exposition there. And the low end has a nice level of decay, and it's not ultra punchy, it's not going to slap you across your face, but it delivers the low end that you would potentially want for an IM that's not bass heavy. And for the KXXX, two things. One, they are an Aria, but slightly better across the board. It's the exact same portrayal, exact same sound signature. It's an Aria, but ever so slightly better everywhere. And I like the visuals more, being all matte black and everything else. But also there's the case, which is better than the Arias in my opinion, so that's a potential bonus. But the original MSRP for these is $150, while the Aria it's $79. Like 150 for 80, it's not worth the difference. If you find a KXXX for $80, definitely grab it because it is better than the Aria, and for the same price, why not? I love them to pieces because the aesthetics and the carry case and the fact that it's a tiny bit better and the sound is fantastic for me, but comparing them to that's basically where they sit. Now about everything else, these were the third to last IEMs that I've tested, and it jumped out to me the fact that they are so power hungry. Pretty much everything was around the same level of volume, at least so it was like comfortable and good enough for listening for the fine details and trying to get the little nuances out of across the board. But these things needed 20 to 30% more energy to actually deliver the same thing. They did sound a tiny bit more closed off than everything else. They obviously, these are the cheapest one across the bunch. They are about $8. So for that amount of money, they are absolutely fantastic. They are honestly stupidly impressive for the amount of money they are asking for. So if you're thinking about getting something like this, I would definitely recommend it. Something else that jumped out at me was these guys. The Tanchjim Ola bass. Because they have bass in the name, I was actually expecting them to be a more bass focused, a more bassy, like bass head sort of IM, and they're not. Well, at least compared to everything else on this desk, these were not the strongest bass across the board. They were very well executed, and I actually enjoyed how they portrayed the low end, even though they did lack a little bit of detail in the mid-range because of it, probably a little too much bleeding from the low end on top of the mid-range. But the one that was like, holy crap, you need to tune your bass a little bit down was these, the Dunu Kimas. These guys were really strong in the bass department. Just too much bass and not much of everything else. So I need to test them a little bit more. It could be because I was testing these different shaped silicone tips. They look like foams, but they're not, they're silicone. It might have been that, and I actually shudder to think what these would sound with actual foam tips. But that was another thing that was really impressive to me. Now in terms of pricing, I get it. There's stuff that just, I mean, it tries to deliver more, the whole experience, the package, all the accessories. I need to test out the Dunu Kimas a little bit more because all of those extra things, they don't warrant a $110 price range for these guys. The Tanchjim Ola bass was actually an interesting surprise because with everything that this delivers, everything that's in the package, the unboxing experience, all the accessories and the detail, the attention to detail also, and the quality of everything that you get, $43 is pretty amazing for what we're getting here. And if we would just create sort of a price ladder across the board here, this is number 8 in terms of, you know, how expensive it is. Number 1 by comparison is the SeeAudio Yume 2, because these puppies cost $200. It's a pretty premium price range for something like this, and I get it. Again, the accessories, the attention to detail, the unboxing experience, I don't know. It sounds awesome, but from this testing, I actually like a couple of the others better than the Yume 2 right now. Yes, this is just first impressions, but the sound signature didn't really bite me just yet. Now, going all the way back down to $30 at $29.99 actually, the Zhuliniao Jinghong is, well, honestly, I thought this thing was much more expensive because of how it's presented and the accessories and the quality of the stuff, the quality of the cable. I mean, it's not that much different from what I was seeing from a couple of these other things. Sound-wise, it's inoffensive, but it's actually quite competent. But if you count the price at $30, these things have a really strong price per performance ratio. I wouldn't say they are quite as good as the Tripowin Leá, which comes in at $26, $25.99. So at 25 and 29, I would gravitate towards the Tripowin in terms of sound quality, but not necessarily for every situation. I have an inkling that these are perhaps going to be better off in terms of presentation for the mid-range in more female-focused vocalists, but I need to test that out a little bit further before I tell you guys if that's really my conclusion. Now, these last four were the ones I was most anticipating actually testing out. One of them was this, the TRN VX Pro. I was impressed with how they performed and what they presented. I like the way that they pushed the low end a little bit further than I expected them to, even though the low end was a little bit sloppy in terms of separation and not bleeding out into the rest. Decay was nice and it has quite a bit of punch, so the overall sound signature is interesting. I need to test them out a little bit further though, because at $89, I'm not really seeing why I gravitate towards something like this compared to some of the other things on the table. So yeah, after a long while waiting to actually test them, now I know that they are pretty competent actually. Then we have the Tipsy Ttromsos, the Pine Stone Sea version. I like the fact that the cable is braided. I like the comfort, I like the size, I like the fact that these are actually quite light to put on your ears. It doesn't need to have a full metal jacket for me to say that the quality of the structure is good, and the sound signature was actually pretty amazing. And up to a point, it reminds me a little bit of the Arias. It is a bit more expensive than the Arias, actually $10 more expensive, 89 versus 79 on the Arias, but the overall sound signature, it's very close, it's very comparable. I like the fact that it doesn't try to boost out the low end, it doesn't recess the mid-range all that much, and it does tip down on the treble a bit without many peaks and valleys, which makes it a little more soothing and less prone to feel sort of skittish. So it's not sibilant and the actual presentation is really interesting and I think it's really nice. It does have a little more punch in the bass than the Arias from the tests that I have ran just now, but I would say that it doesn't control the low end as much. And overall detail would be on par, let's say. So for $89 from my 3 minutes of testing them, I would be quite all right actually letting you guys know that, yeah, these are worth the purchase. And then there were the two tins. Let's start with the Mech Warrior because that was the one that impressed me the most actually. These have nothing to do with everything else the tin has done so far in terms of industrial design and the shape and the way that they're presenting stuff, even the naming with the Mech Warrior branding. But I actually really I really like this look. I find it like, it's actually really awesome. In terms of sound though, I'm just gonna say this for now since this is a first impressions. I was expecting it to be more expensive than the T2 DLC. And as I was, spreadsheeting everything, turns out these are $39. They are not a flavor that's probably going to, be good for everybody, just like the T2s weren't. Many people thought the T2s were a bit too tame. These are a T2 with a lot of energy without being too much like the original T2 Plus, which was completely out of the park. I really enjoy what these are capable of doing. Are they the end-all be-all for everything? Not really. I think they have a little bit of a lack in finesse for the presentation in the mid-range specifically, but at $39, honestly, this is awesome. Like really, I really enjoy them. I'm looking forward to actually diving deeper into them for the full review. And last but certainly not least, the Tin T2 DLC. Now, for everybody who already knows what a Tin T2 sounds like, the original ones, not the T2 Plus or the T2 Evo or those kind of different versions, the T2, the originals, these are that, but a little bit better. It's akin to the differentiation I made in the beginning about the Arias to the KXXX, sort of the same thing. These sound like T2s with a little bit more finesse across the board and actually a tiny bit more energy, but very tiny bit more energy. These are T2s but improved. So if you loved the originals, you're going to love these. They are a little bit more expensive though. The originals were 50 bucks, these are 59. So there's that. But honestly, they're fantastic. These are awesome. If I didn't have any of the T2s and I wanted this sound signature, I would get them in the blink of an eye. But between these two, honestly, despite the fact that I love the T2 sound signature, I think I would actually gravitate towards the Mech Warrior right now. Does it have the overall quality and finesse the T2 DLC can present across the board? No, but I need to test them out a little bit further to actually put my foot down and say, yeah, that's what's happening. But we are finally done. After 12 IMs with their respective unboxings and testings and first impressions, we went through all of it together, and thank you very much for sticking up until this point because I know this has been a long video. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Anyway, I am going to dive deeper into a bunch of these IMs with full reviews, not necessarily all of them, but if there's one or more than one that you guys would want to check specifically, do let me know in the comments down below and I'll make sure to grab that IM and make a full review of that as well. That being said, for today, this is it. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Gus, and I'll catch you guys later.